Hey everyone, it's Geeky Vices and I'm J-Belle, where I talk about the latest bits of geekdom and pop culture I've been into lately. So the general vibe of the show is unrehearsed, unedited, and unhip. I don't really care what's the latest and greatest. I just go with wherever my attention span takes me. So sometimes it's watching something that just came out, sometimes it's rewatching something, sometimes it's reverting back to something from my childhood that I watched back in the 90s. Or I haven't done anything. I haven't reverted back anything to the 80s yet, but I'll let you guys know if I do. But yeah, so that's the general vibe. My show is spoilers light, although I don't think that's too much of an issue this week. But just to forewarn people, if you want to go in complete unbiased into my content, then watch my video after you've enjoyed my topic of conversation. Anyways, this week I am going to be talking about Queer Eye because I just finished watching the third season of the reboot, and I'm going to be spending a lot of time comparing it back to the original because I never watched the original when it was actually airing, but years ago when it was actually on Netflix, I would just watch it basically on loop as my relaxing show, the way I do with the Great British Bake Off these days. So I feel pretty familiar with most of those episodes, and I have watched the newer episode, the reboot, a few times, so I feel like I'm familiar enough to be able to do a compare and contrast. So the original cast had, let's see, it was Ted for food and wine. Let's see, Carson was fashion. Kyan was grooming. Tom with an H was designed, so basically he'd be the one redoing the interior and sometimes exteriors of homes. And then there was Jay Rodriguez, who was the culture guy, who a lot of times it'd be things like helping with public speaking or helping someone like with, if this is the profession they want to do, like to kind of help them, like connect them so that way they makes connections or resources that'll help them to make it to the next step. So the culture guy is kind of like the guy who fills in the blanks, kind of. So I adored the first one. I still love it. I will go back and then the reboot has, trying to remember my order, is Anthony as food and wine. So he basically, interesting thing is that as far as the cast members, like I know that he actually worked for Ted Allen for a while, so he actually has connections to the original show. So I feel like in that regard, he has the original show's blessing. So there's Anthony, as I said. There's Tan, who I adore so much, as fashion. There's Jonathan as grooming. There is Bobby as design, who I also absolutely adore. And then there's Karamo as culture. And I guess Karamo I think he was on The Real World. I don't know. I remember reading an article about talking about each of the individual new guys, and I remember he was I think when the first openly gay people on that show, and this was back when reality shows weren't so prevalent, so it was kind of groundbreaking at the time. So yeah, that's the cast members. So I think anyone who knows anything about Queer Eye knows that it has the quote unquote Fab Five, who are 5 assorted gay men who go in and basically spend a week with someone who's been nominated and kind of help like make over their whole life by tackling these different aspects of their life. And usually the format of the show is that usually it'll start off by the Fab Five descending on the person and seeing their home, usually like trying things on or tossing things around and judging some things, like usually the fact that there's like bad smells in the fridge type of thing, especially if the newer one, because Anthony apparently really loves bad smells, which is a weird thing, but okay, to each their own. But so yeah, they do that, and then they'll take the candidate to individual things with them. So it's like they'll spend some time with the fashion person. They'll spend some time with this person, and basically it'll all be building up and like building up, building up, building up, and then the person comes back shortly after their grooming makeover to the big reveal of how their home, usually it's their home, was redesigned. Like sometimes it's their workspace, or in one episode in the remake it was a community center. And there was like a fire station. In the original series, there was like an episode where it was the the Elk Lodge, I believe that's the organization. They always think it's the Flintstones parody, where it's the water buffaloes, but I think it was the Elk Lodge. But yeah, anyways, and then the person then basically they go get individual time with that person. They give them like some extra little individual tips. They do a little fashion show where they try and spin the guys things, and the original show is kind of set up where it's like usually they're all strewn about on the straight guy's bed, and then it basically is then the cast members are taken back to watch video footage of the person finishing up their night and basically showing how they use all these skills. And yeah, and there'd be varying degrees of success, although I will say with the remake, usually people are pretty good about not messing things up as much. So I think part of it's, so one of the things that's very notable is that the reboot is just Queer Eye. It's not Queer Eye for the straight guy. In fact, the original one did have 2 episodes with gay men, and then it had 1 episode with a trans man. So it wasn't always just straight guys with the original one. However, the reboot, it has had 1 gay man, 1 trans man, and then it's had, in the second season it had 1 woman, and then in the 3rd season it had 3 straight women and 1 lesbian female. So like as I said, like, it's diversifying, so that's great. Like as I said, like I'm glad it's kind of evolved past having to be the original tagline Queer Eye for the straight guy, how it's just like, nope, it's just Queer Eye. And also another big thing is that the original series took place in New York, and the reboot actually is definitely nowhere near. Well, actually, back to the original one. It did take place in New York, but it did have a couple travel episodes, because I remember it did have a couple episodes in Texas and a couple episodes in Vegas. But the reboot, the first 2 seasons were based out of Georgia, and then the 3rd season was a combination of Missouri and Kansas. So I do like how it's not just based in one location, and how it's also not just based in New York City, where there's got to be so many resources for them. And like I feel like it's a little bit more approachable that way, because like there's a lot of people who, I mean, they will sometimes be with people who are in cities, but they also deal with people who are like in the middle of nowhere, like small towns or farms and such. And it's like, yeah, they're not going to necessarily have all these resources that you would have back in New York City. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that's cool about the reboot. Comparing, I mean, I love both of them. I think that the original cast members, I think that their chemistry is a little bit more authentic, and I think some of the cast members were a little bit more authentic, but I think that usually the talent and choices of the reboot is a little bit more solid. Like, I love Carson Kressley, but some of his fashion choices, I feel like we're trying to push someone a little bit too much. Versus I think Tan is much better about understanding the person and trying to give them like just classic things that they will actually wear. Because I think sometimes Carson's choices, that person is not going to wear once the show's done. Versus I feel like Tan has very solid, consistent fashion advice for the people. And I think he's very good about listening to them. And also, I mean, it's kind of nice that he's not always trying to sneak a peek when the person's in the dressing room. So I feel like he's a little bit more professional about it. Yeah, I adore Tan. Like, I think he's interesting. I know he's not necessarily as immersed in gay culture as some of the rest of the cast members, but like as far as, or not as much as gay culture, like I guess like the whole community. Like I think he's a little bit more insulated, but you know what? Like not everyone is gonna be a big activist. Like sometimes, like I remember they were talking about like how it's like not necessarily, they were talking about how it's not always about being like out and loud. It's nice about being like out and just proud. You know, just being confident in yourself. And I think Tan definitely rocks that. And I do love the episode where they are making over, I believe it was Neil Reddy, because like he's one of my favorite it was one of my favorite episodes, who is Pakistani, and like it was interesting like seeing the cultural elements come out. And that's how I know my limited knowledge of Bollywood movements is from Tan's little lessons about like keep away, or I'm doing it wrong. I'm doing it wrong, but anyways, turn the light, pepper grind, and I don't remember how the keep away one goes, but whatever. As I said, like that's my very limited Bollywood moves, but hey, I learned it from Queer Eye. So yeah, I think Tan is more, I think fashion wise, I think Tan is more solid than Carson. Although you can't beat Carson and Ted's chemistry. And I do like how they would always pick on Tom, honestly. As far as food, I feel like Anthony, I don't know what his skill levels are compared to Ted's, but I feel like he usually makes more solid choices. Like I feel like Ted would sometimes overcomplicate things. Like he would be too ambitious with what he tried teaching them. And I think Anthony's better about scaling it to the person's skills. Like one episode he taught someone how to make guacamole because like that person clearly had never made it and like had no basis for it. And there's other ones where it's like, okay, let's make one of your culture's traditional dishes. Let's do tadig. And then there's other episodes. And yeah, I remember Ted like would do, like I remember there's like an infamous episode where Ted like had someone try making a live lobster. Like had to kill the lobster and everything, and the way he did it. Like it's like, yeah, this person wasn't ready for that. And like I feel like Ted would a lot of times a little bit more often like rely on catering. So yeah, I feel like Anthony's better about the actual teaching, and I feel like there's less fails with his with the clients, because except for one episode, there was one episode where he was teaching about homemade pasta, and he took him, and that's one of the things, the kind of cool things about Anthony is like usually he'll take people to restaurants to like help learn the dish, not always, but a lot of times. And in that restaurant, they had like a little hand crank pasta roller, and so like they taught this guy how to make hand rolled pasta, or yeah, fresh pasta, like a very specific way. And then for the guy's house, he got him a electric pasta roller that was supposed to like knead the dough and everything. It's like, well, you should have taught him to use the equipment you were giving him. So I feel like that guy's failure was on Anthony, not on that guy. That was, I can't remember his name. It was the one with the guy who's the sexy beast. Oh, Leonardo. Anyways, so yeah, that Anthony, yeah, I feel like sometimes he's a little bit fake. So that's just my vibe. Let's see. In the original one, I love Kyan. He's a beautiful man. I loved him. I will always love Kyan. It's on my short list of potential cat names, because I think that is a perfect grooming name for naming after the Queer Eye grooming guy, and it would spell the way his name is spelled. And I know as far as the original guys, like he's the one who basically kind of fizzled out after the show. Like I know Tom continued to have this great design career. I mean, Carson's was on Dancing Stars and judging with Drag Race, and Ted has all this Food Network stuff with Chopped, and then Jay Rodriguez has an acting career. Like I remember he had a small recurring role on How I Met Your Mother as Barney's gay brother's husband. So yeah, like I said, like Kyan, I know, is the only one who hasn't had like too much success post the show, but I still love him. Karamo is, or no, not Kyan. Jonathan is the equivalent, and I do like how Jonathan isn't as trying to do. I think that's one of the things. Like I think the first series like was trying to sometimes go for very abrupt changes, like for the shock value, like the fashion sometimes, or with the grooming choice. Like they love doing something with really, really long hair and cutting it really short, or like shaving off a beard. Like they love that. And Jonathan is much more I think is a little bit more understanding that like that's not everyone's thing. Like he's a lot of times more willing to keep the facial hair, or like keep the length of the hair. And like I do really like the results typically. And like honestly, the main failures, like sometimes like someone didn't know what the products were, which product was which. And then there was one where like the guy didn't say anything about his plans of completely shaving his face clean, like making himself completely clean shaven. It's like Jonathan could have done that for you and like could have had a discussion about like how to do it properly and not hurt your skin and, you know, cut with the grain, not against it. But there's at least not as many tragic failures with that one. And let's see. Who else have I known? I love, design. Tom was always good. He wasn't my favorite personality, but he always is good. His stuff was always fine, but I love Bobby's aesthetic. Like, I think I love Bobby's attitude. Like, he is one of my favorites. Like, he's not the biggest personality, but I love his. I think he's one more genuine than some of the other ones can be. Like, I feel like Anthony and Karama are both a little fake at times, but I feel like Bobby is very genuine. I think he's witty, and I love his aesthetic, and I feel what I'm about to say is not an insult. It's said with love. He kind of reminds me physically as like David Coulier, who played Joey on Full House. He totally looks like him to me. Which, as I said, it's not at all shade. It's not supposed to be shade at all. It's just that's just what he looks like to me, and that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing by any means. But because I loved Uncle Joey as a kid. But yeah, like I think Bobby is amazing, and I think when he does reveal parts of his past, like I feel like it's very much connects to it. Like I don't feel like it's contrived, and I feel like he very much like has a really good heart. So like I said, like he's not one of the loudest personalities, like, and that's a pretty loud group, but like as like I feel like I love him so much. And that reminds me, like one of the things that's interesting is like it feels like they definitely, I mean, I know it's a produced show. I mean, it's a reality show, but there's also producers involved. Like, it definitely, like, each episode, like, someone gets to have, the cast members gets to kind of, like, have their moment with the client. So sometimes it's, like, Bobby connecting with someone about the fact that, like, he had trouble. Like, he had a very strong church upbringing and how, like, he felt completely rejected from the church because of his sexual identity. So, like that, or how, sorry, trying to think of another good example that's not Bobby, or Karama will bond with someone over the fact of being, like, a gay black man in the South. Like, they'll bond. And so, yeah. And then, finally, there is Culture, who, in the original one, was Jay Rodriguez, who I adore. I think, I know he was the young guy in the group, but I think he was so great, such a good heart. Like, I was like, he felt so genuine. And I think Karama has good ideas, but I sometimes feel like he's a little bit fake. So that's just my thought. Usually his stuff is very much taking things metaphorically. It's like, okay, we're gonna have you're scared of climbing this mountain. We're gonna have you rock climb and then knock down this wall. Like, it's just like he'll have like very visual, physical manifestations of his metaphor. So like I think he gets good results. Yeah. So those are my thoughts. I do feel like with the reboot, I feel like the people who are the clients, I feel like they are more appreciative. Like I know they're definitely more appreciative in the first one, but like I feel like there's less people who like go around and basically ignore most of the advice. Like I can think of a couple ones where like the guy was clearly not into it. Like I think he just got nominated, and like I think he just honestly wanted it for the stuff rather than actually like taking on all of their advice. And part is like because I do think they are better as far as, I mean, design stuff was pretty good in both of them, but like I love Bobby's aesthetic. Like I think he's so dead on and so good about listening to the person. But like Tan, for instance, like I think that Tan is a much better approachable sense of style. So, and yeah, as I said, Anthony's better about scaling it to the person's actual skill level. And so, yeah, I enjoy both of them. It was definitely fun seeing them have more clients. I loved the woman they had in the first episode of season 3. Like, I think it's cool that they're broadening the horizons and this. Like, I feel like they're not trying to change someone too much. Hi, sorry, video kind of crapped out on me, so I'm just trying to wrap it up real quick, even though I know my video is super long. But yeah, I think that it is pretty cool that they're just trying to elevate people rather than try to change who they are or try making them something that they're not. Like, I think they realize, like, that's not going to work, and you know what? This is much better. So I think that they are better about tailoring to the person and listening to them. So yeah, and yeah, I would totally recommend either the original one or the reboot. Although I know the reboot's more accessible. I kind of prefer the music in the original one. I feel like the new one's trying a little too hard. And honestly, I remember watching this video where it was like, I think it was a clip from BoJack Horseman, which I've never have watched, but like where it's like showing like the vibe of like things from the 80s and the 90s, and then how like and then the 2000s and 2010s, and like how you couldn't really tell the music just between the 2000s and the 2010s. And I think that's very true. So yeah, I feel like it's trying too hard to be hip and modern, but it's like I don't see anything wrong with the old one. Like the other one does not seem dated to me. But dang it, I'm also a 90s kid at heart, so maybe that's just my taste. But yeah, anyways, I recommend either one. And yeah, as I said, I think there's certain people I love a little bit more in the original one. Like I think there's a little bit more authenticity, and I think, as I said, I think there's a little bit more chemistry in the first one. But you know what? For a reboot, the second one does a pretty good job, and I'm glad that it's diversifying its clientele. So yeah, that's it for now. Until next time, hopefully my video will actually let me do a proper farewell in one take. This is, I think, the first time I'm actually going to try mashing two of my videos together. So wish me luck. All right. Bye, guys. Enjoy.